On the latest episode, we are joined by FA County Coach Developer Sally Needham. Sally speaks to us around evoking curiosity across the psych and social corner in the foundation phase.
On the latest episode of the PCT podcast, we are joined by Derbyshire FA County Coach Developer Sally Needham. So I don't think I need to introduce any further. Sally, it's an absolute honour to have you today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
Good.
Obviously, we're recording this during lockdown 9.
Yeah.
Then I think we are at the minute. Look, it's an absolute honour to speak to. How are you keeping during lockdown?
Good, thank you. I'm doing a lot of baking, a lot of cooking for some kind of logical processing in my brain. Trying to just be kind to myself when I have a bit of an off day, or trying not to just make a list and try and get everything done in one day. Make it kind of a thing of I've got a couple of weeks, or it's you always try and rush to get through things or get things done. So I'm finding my rhythm a little bit, but yeah, all good, thank you.
Good stuff. And how's it currently affecting sort of your job? Are you busy, more busy?
A little bit more busy. But yeah, it's we're just trying to keep connected with our learners. So part of my role is obviously support learners through their qualifications. So yeah, it's changed slightly in a sense of I'm not going out to actually watch and work and have the in-situ support, but we're trying just to connect in. And I did some drop-in sessions last week with some of the level 2 learners around, just looking at the project and just keep in contact with them, and same with the new cohort of the UEFA. So we had a little just getting to know each other, and so it's changed in one way, the fact that I'm not going out and doing the in-situ sports, but still trying to check in and connect and support them, so that when we get back to the grass, the kind of the projects and all the other stuff's kind of in line and on top of things. So it's just a case then going out and supporting them. So yeah, trying to get them just into a best possible place and just try just to really just keep in connection with them.
No, that's great. I mean, for those listening who've probably lived under a rock or aren't aware of the work that you do, can you give a bit of an insight into what your role currently does?
So obviously you mentioned my role as county coach developer, so that's my main role. But my area that I've really got a passion in is foundation phase for a start. But then I started looking at child development quite in a different capacity. So very fortunate that I was one of the learners on the pilot of the Advanced Youth Award in 2012, and the psych and social elements that got delivered kind of really evoked some curiosity in me. And I wanted then to know the how and the why. So I've gone and kind of looked at child development, neuroscience, social attachment, to understand what goes off below the surface. So we tend to talk a lot around, we tend to, I feel, sometimes do very much surface level, so very much grass stuff. And I've tried to look at kind of what's going off below the surface that influences that. So I've been looking at that and using other people's work. It's not my work, it's other theories, and try and transfer it into football. So yeah, it's been exciting.
I mean, we are going to touch on the psych and social side later on in the chat. I mean, I just wanted to give you, the listeners and yourself, a bit of a chance to go through your career to date as such. I think with all coaches, we're all on different journeys, and we see maybe the end product and don't see, I'd say, struggles of the journey that we've to get there. And so just wanted to have a chat. What first got you into coaching? At what age was that you sort of spot that curiosity?
Do you know what? I didn't actually want to get into coaching, if I'm being honest. What happened was I went to college, and a part of the role, if you were captain or vice captain, was that you had to help with the warm-ups and kind of had a bit more player ownership. And because if the tutor or the coach were late, then you had to kind of get it going. Yeah. And our vice captain first year and then captain second year, and the coach at our college was coaching down at Barnsley Girls Centre of Excellence, and just said, actually, you're quite good at managing the group, and do you want to come down and help out? So I kind of went down, and it just evolved from there. But I never really, I wanted to be a PE teacher or a history teacher. That's what I wanted to be when I was growing up. And kind of coaching never came into the thought process. So I kind of just dropped into it quite quick. Yeah. And then we're quite quick in doing my coaching awards, which at the time, obviously a few years back now, were quite unique in a sense of the female. So I think I did my B licence. I got my B licence at age 20. And then I kind of went into down the line of, I got assigned a mentor from the FA, and I got assigned Colin Morris, which is Dave Morris's son. So Dave is one of the CCDs that does my same job as me, and Colin was in coach development. Mm-hmm. So I kind of got delivering coach ed from age about 22, 23, which is interesting because obviously one were female, there weren't that many at the time. I think about 4 of us in the country, and so young. So that were interesting, and kind of got into coach development quite early on. And it's not really until somebody asked me the other day what were my influences when I was younger, and that got me into coaching. And I didn't really have any. Like, my dad got me into the game of football and used to take me to the football and kind of said, you know what, you've kind of got an eye for what goes off, because the conversations I used to run it from the bottom and go, why has he took him off, and when he's put him on, because that's aids his qualities. And so my dad kind of went, oh, you've got an eye for something, but he didn't. It never really, I never had anybody that I looked at that I was like, oh, I want to go into coaching because of them. But later on in my career, or more recently, I've had quite a few influences, but right at the early on, no, I didn't. I kind of just fell into it, and then I just carried on with it.
Can you remember your first session that you delivered?
No. I remember doing my level 1 at college, and I think I had a passing session in like 3, you know, when you have 1, middle, and then the end. I think I had that. But no, I can't. I can remember now looking back, when I used to coach the under 10s and I was centre direct at the girls, I can remember now looking back thinking, I used to do very structured sessions, and I think, God, I used to think, God, I've done a really good session tonight when I went home. But actually, it just looked all right. Like, the girls asked what I did, when really that wasn't coaching, that was just delivering a session. Whereas now, I kind of look at coaching in a massive different light. So it's interesting that, you know, and at the time, you do what you think's right. It's all with the best intentions and where you are and your journey and how you are. But yeah, when I look back at some of my sessions that I delivered, probably not in my behaviours, but definitely in my practice design, is well further away from where I am now.
Yeah. I spoke to somebody the other day around their first coaching session, and openly admitted it was an absolute car crash. And, you know, through their experiences, they used that to gauge where they were. And just one thing I wanted to go back to was, can you remember your first coaching role? So what was it?
Yeah, so I started obviously at the Girls' Centre of Excellence as I went away to university. So I was 18 and working at the Girls' Centre of Excellence, and my parents really nicely, and the decision I made, I had choice of going away to uni or staying a little bit closer to home, and I stayed a little bit closer to home, so I went to Leeds Met, but I stayed over in Leeds Met because I wanted to experience university life. But my parents were really good in supporting me, the fact that they bought me a car, so I were able to come home and coach on a Tuesday and a Thursday night and a Saturday games programme, but then drive back. So I had university life, but the opportunity to kind of carry on my coaching. So that was a decision that I made to kind of, I enjoy this. And after I finished uni, I gave myself a year to see if I could get a job in coaching. So I worked for my parents in the morning in the office doing admin, and then I set up my own little company going and doing PPA, after school, holiday clubs, and working at the Girls' Centre still at the time, and got up little coaching jobs and thought, right, I'll give myself a year to see if I can make a go of it. If not, I will probably go back to uni and do my PGCE and go into teaching and in PE. But yeah, I preferred, in the last year of uni, I did a placement in a secondary school, and it was exhausting doing the full day PE and then coaching at night. Okay. So I decided that coaching I preferred more. So I'd have a go at that, and then if not, I'd go back and do my coaching. And luckily, I got a full-time job, and then that's been it.
I mean, one thing I'm interested in terms of playing, you mentioned you were playing at university. You've got the B license at 20 years old. Did that influence the way that you played, doing, that level of coaching qualification so young? And was there a tipping point maybe at that point of going, I'm seeing the game a little bit different here?
Yes. I think, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, but the impact that it was more an impact for the coach coaching me.
Okay.
So because I was higher qualified than him coaching me when I was playing, when I come back from university, he didn't like that. So the experience that I had then while I was still a player was quite hard because I was a B licensed coach. So the kind of the problem that you had then is anything you questioned about the session, it was just because you B license and just because you're doing this, and so it was really hard. So I think my playing then ended up going on a back burner, and I just kind of played for fun, and group of girls that I knew, and we just played, and we managed his own team, and we took his own training sessions, and there were a couple of girls in there that coached, and that's where we went down the line of, because when then you had that negativity, it kind of put you off from playing. But yeah, it did make me look at the game differently and question things a bit more, especially, pre-season. I was like, why are we running? They're like, shut up and get running, Sally. And I'm like, really? But yeah, so it gave me a different view of it. But yeah.
That's interesting. It's something that's always, it plays with my mind and that conscious of, do players who do their badges early or whilst they're still playing, do they then start to see the game and, I'm not going to say rebel against the manager or coach, but be more like, well, I'm not sure on that. I believe this, and can it cause an influence, or, that environment where, as you say, it becomes a little bit more difficult to play?
Yeah.
Something
it did.
To me.
No, it certainly did. It certainly had an effect on the coach, knowing that he got a higher level. I'm not saying it was female, but a higher level of coach to him as a player. So I think that's an interesting process.
I like it because it becomes maybe the ego of the coach then, and does that get in the way of what hopefully we're going to speak about shortly in terms of the psych and social side? Does that get in the way of that process and that development between the player and coach?
Yeah, it certainly does. And I can remember my phrase I used to say to him all the time was, I'm just here as a player. I just want to play. Like, I'm not here to criticise or to look at the coaching, or I just want to play. Like, I'm just here to play. I'm just a player. And I can remember saying that to him thousands of times. I'm just here as a player. Like, just coach me. But that's, looking back now, it's interesting.
Very interesting. Let's go back to sort of the coaching pathway. 2 years coaching at the David Beckham Academy?
I did, yes.
How did that role come about then?
So, as I've just explained, there were only probably about 4 of us in the country that did coach ed as a female. And when David set up the academy, and staff there wanted an array of male and female coaches. So they kind of went to the FA, I think, and asked for who's coach ed. And they had a list of probably 6 or 7 names, and then they went after a few. There were already working there. I joined a little bit later than original crew. But yeah, just got a phone call. Do you want to come down and have a chat? Which I did. And then decided I'd go down there. So I had 2 years down there and met some absolutely amazing people that a lot of them still work in football, and had an amazing life experience. And then it made me quite a lot of them are still friends now. And then quite a lot of us moved to the FA and then work in the skills programme or within the CDM team. So yeah.
That was sort of the next progression for anybody who's worked with the FA skills team will know how great the project was and how much it influenced grassroots. Do you mind talking to us a little bit about the time with the fantastic skills team and the work you and the team did?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate that I was part of the original 66 that got hired, and it was a programme that Sir Trevor Brooking really wanted to push in around the 5 to 11 age phases. And we got 66 staff to start with, like I said, and 3 weeks of training on understanding children, games, everything. And then we went and supported a school sports partnership, so I worked with teachers to kind of help support them, give them more confidence in delivering PE in the school, but use football as a vehicle, but linked it in and tied it into a lot of the curriculum. And then we did skills centres, so children come into the skills centre on a night, and then we did holiday courses and a bit of supporting other things, but all around the 5 to 11s. And luckily, when I did the AYA, I was working in the skills programme, so it enabled me to then apply a lot of the stuff, and I was seeing that everything were working and the kids were just flourishing in front of us. So that's then how then I started to think, well, how and why is that? And we're doing this in the psych and social corner from the AYA, but how then is it working? So yeah, I loved my skills programme. I think it's defined a lot of people's career. So if you look at a lot of people that's come, a lot of people at the FA and in now working clubs have come through the skills programme. It was an absolute bedrock of a foundation for coaching, especially when you got 32 kids in a hall and you got, Christmas tree on one side and a piano in the other, and it was brilliant, and just I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've worked with the skills team through a gentleman called Gavin Nelson, and I just remember just sit there because I was a level 2 coach at the time. I was just in awe of the sessions and how advanced it was, and it really made me think, right, you're nowhere near the level you need to be, and I'm still not. But you work with these people and you see these people and you think, wow. And again, I think I was a little bit gutted when the program sort of came to an end because of the work that it had done.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we used to interview people, there were an array of people that used to apply, but you really looked for who was the right person for that right role, no matter the qualifications or experiences, or it were really around the child. And it was a fantastic programme, and it's really has probably set some children up for life, and also influenced quite a lot of the coaching. And it was just brilliant how it just came in line, same with the youth awards stuff. So yeah, it all kind of mixed together in what a brilliant programme. And yeah, I was the same, gutted when it finished. But
no, I mean, from that you that's why you started your role as the county coach developer. Can you tell us what your average week looks like?
Very, very varied, which I love, but normally it will be a lot of afternoon and evening work. So a lot of doing my own stuff in the morning, so going for a run and going to yoga or whatever in the morning, and then normally it would be afternoon going and supporting some coaches, tying into 2 areas or some other people in that area at the same time for a coffee and whatever. And then so it's a lot of nights and evenings, or we might be delivering courses, so that might be a weekend or through the week. But our diaries are so varied, because of if I deliver a course and I get 12 of the learners, them learners could be all different nights. Yeah. So it just depends who's actually, so you're meeting the needs of the learners. So my diary fits around what nights everybody trains, what times, where they're training. So it's not a Monday, Friday 9 to 5. It's definitely an afternoon and evening or a weekend work rather than a morning. But yeah, so varied.
With that, Sally, how important is it to manage your time well?
Very important. I'm learning. I had a boss. He's head of coaching now at Leeds United, and one of the key things that he really influenced me in was managing my time and having work-life balance. And I thought I did quite well at it. And people used to always refer and say to me, do really well with your work-life balance. But having going into COVID, I realised probably that I didn't do as well as I probably should. So yeah, it's really managing your time. And I have an area and a group of affiliates that I tend to try to match up to the area. So Derbyshire's a massive area geographically. So I very much see or look after Glossop as an area. So I sometimes might get up to Glossop at say 4, meet a coach, and then 4 till 5, 5 while 6, watching the session, and then watching the session 8 while 9.
Yeah.
So you've got to really plan your time. But yeah, massive lesson that Fozzie gave to me were around managing your time and work-life balance, and he really reiterated it on a regular basis. So it started me in good stead in that way.
Yeah, I know we spoke off air before the call about COVID's allowed us to just maybe reset a little bit and see what is important to go back to. So, you know, hopefully it's given us all a bit of a time to understand that work-life balance.
Definitely hope so. Really hope so.
I mean, I've been very fortunate to see you work on many occasions through the FA Coach Mentor Programme, and more recently fortunate to listen in on a webinar you hosted with Ronnie Reason around sort of invoking curiosity to your coaching in the psychological corner, which was very informative for all involved. I just wanted to delve into the psych corner and coaching in the foundation phase a little bit more.
Yeah.
What intrigues you most around that corner?
Well, because of my coaching journey, which obviously I've just explained, seeing it being delivered in the psych and social and the impact on the kids in, especially in the foundation phase, and looking at the how and the why, that's what really captured me, and that's what still captures me now. So looking into it even deeper, the impact that you can have on a child's life in that foundation phase for sport, but for anything within emotional social development, is massive for what then they take into their next stage of life, into adolescence. And the psych and social, for me, and understanding the child and a little bit of the extra bit of the work that I've been looking at, very much starts to build the soil below the surface. So puts things in for a child to be able to cope with them what life throws at them later on. And I think the foundation phase, especially the psych and social elements, can have a massive impact on prevention work for mental health later on, but for their life successes, and then also for performance if that's the path route that they go down. So I just feel it foundation phase and psych and social underpins everything for them what the children can go on to achieve.
I mean, one of the standout messages that I took from the webinar was maybe looking through a different lens. So we can sometimes see a player, you know, this is all ages, but especially in the 5 to 11 phase, as being challenging.
Yeah.
If we were to look at it through a different lens, we may see distressed behaviour.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing a bit of science and thoughts behind that? And you know, a little bit better than what I could explain.
I'll try. It's a complicated process, but I will try. The biggest thing for me is I saw a statement with Stuart Sanker, and Stuart Sanker's one of the leads in like child self-regulation, and he said when you see a child differently, you see a different child. And when we look at behaviours that are in front of us, if you separate the child from the behaviour, what's the behaviour telling you? And sometimes some of our behaviours that our childs display are what I class as bottom-up behaviour. So what's part of their brain that we have got through evolution that keeps us safe, so controls us in a sense of helping to keep us safe by putting us into a state of either flight, fright or freeze, which we all know about, which is life threat or danger. And some of the behaviours that our children are displaying, if we look at them in the sense of the distress behaviours, then we can help support them to help, as I've just mentioned, around putting things into neurological and into their stuff that's below the surface that helps to develop their soil, so helps to develop their stress response system. Because our brains are so powerful that link our body and our brain and our nervous system, that sometimes they keep us safe in really healthy ways. So say, you know, you were walking through a field and a bull started charging to you, they to keep you safe in that way because it's put you to do something to stop you from getting hit by the bull. But also we've got some unhealthy ways, and we get this by our brain and body working together. So that kept you safe last time, so we'll go down back to that response again. And it's massive on what we sometimes think a child can cope with, or we wonder why they react in a certain way. Every child is different, and through experiences that gets logged in the brain and the nervous system is then how somebody will respond to certain things. And when we kind of separate that child from that behaviour, then we can look at probably behaviour and why is that child behaving that way? When doesn't he, or when does she, or what's triggered that? Do I need support them with that? Is it a regular recurrence? Is it hindering? Is it something that they need to speak about? So the thing within which we've just been talking around is when we look at it through a different lens, instead of going, oh, it's challenging, or they're always like this, or labelling, or just trying to ignore the behaviour. Once we separate the child from the behaviour, it helps us to try to process and help and support and trying to get a curiosity around the behaviour and what is it telling us.
I mean, I really like that bit there about when does the child become challenging. So as you mentioned, we can easily label a child or a person as being challenging, and they always play up. But when is it that they play up? And that's got to take a good deal of observation skills from a coach to try and identify where and when that happens.
Yeah, and also if we, and this is going to go deep now, but if you're like that, we're playing up. If we give a child a label, they will play to the label because it's an element of having a connection and a sense of belonging. So you look at neuroscience, research would tell us that from the minute you are conceived in the womb, there is a tape recorder that is recording all this stuff in your brain. And I get it all the time when I go to sessions, they'll say, oh, he's joker at group, or he's naughty one. Well, to have a sense of belonging in that group, they'll play up to it. And we've got to be really careful on how we, especially boys, and I've just read a fascinating book, and the boys' side of it fascinates me even more than the girls in a way, because we'll play up to things, and we're so programmed into stereotypical norms in the boys. So I was my friend's birthing partner a few weeks ago, and it wasn't progressing as it was, and the two midwives came in, and both of them were like, oh, typical boy. And but it's not, because it's just how it's going. But we tend to then label, and then children will play up to them labels because that's their sense of belonging and bit of the group. So we have to be careful on what language we sometimes give to children, because they'll play to it.
Yeah, it's interesting, as you say. It's really deep, and I know it's invoking sort of my thought process behind players I've worked with. It was really interesting to see the makeup of the brain and how it works in childhood. Yeah. What can we as coaches take into consideration then when coaching in this phase, and the makeup of the brain, if we aren't to see the visual or know about it?
Yeah, I mean, the one that you're on about is, and the brain is such a complex process, and we're only really starting to get to know much more about the brain. And I use a model that I was trained in, but also it helps me to make it more simplified to be able to explain it. So we talk around the three parts of the brain building up. And now it's if you think about like a layered cake, you know, your bottom part's probably your strongest, and then you layer it up. But yeah, our top part of our brain's probably only just come online with us being human the last like 40,000 years. And it's all the processing of planning, reflecting, decision making, problem solving. But yeah, I mean, the brain is the brain. Child development, things will come online at different stages. an understanding that probably children's brain in the foundation phase, what it constitutes and what's probably not online as much, and what we need to help support with, is vital to then when then knowing and understand about the adolescent brain of then what's happening in when the brain changes through adolescence. So it's massive understanding for me, where children are in their development. They're not at that point with their brain all structured and all functioning until mid-late 20s. So when we're asking children to kind of regulate themselves, the foundation phase, and really be understanding about the emotions and how that is with other people, it's not really online. And we need help to give them situations and give them language and help them to sense in, so they can match them feelings and languages, so they can start to catch and match and understand what's going on in their brains and their bodies and sensations and feelings that's going off, because it's natural for people to feel the emotions and feelings. It's what goes below the surface. And you know, we've got to a point now, and I think I said this on the webinar, where we label good and bad emotions and feelings, and they're just feelings and emotions. And if we get to understand that, you know, I feel stressed in this moment, or but I feel really much joy in that, you've got to have an expression of understanding and sharing all the range of emotions, but recognizing when you are and when you're not. Stress is a word that a lot try to now avoid, and go, when you ask people how are you in isolation, I'm fine. Don't want to admit it. Whereas the downside of stress is the chemical that gets released in your body when you're in a prolonged state. So stress actually isn't a bad thing in a sense of emotion and feelings. It's when we're in a prolonged state of it. So I think I've gone a little bit round houses with that, but yeah, the brain, understanding the brain and the structures and how it links and how it has an effect on our behaviour is something that has massively helped me to become more self-aware, and more self-aware than with, like you said, observations of the children.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of leads me on to something which is quite, I'm not going to say disturbing as such, but it's quite shocking to understand. A stat that you mentioned on the webinar was that 1 in 8 children have a diagnosable mental health illness.
Yeah.
Do you maybe foresee that figure changing after COVID-19?
Yeah, if I'm being honest. I mean, I've got no scientific proof of that, but with some children, they'll be thriving in their child development element in this period because they've got a secure base at home, they've got more interaction with parents, they're having some emotional and social soil that is going in. So my niece, who's 5 yesterday actually, probably wasn't ready for school. She was born prem, and she wasn't ready for school in her brain development and child development. She wasn't ready for learning, shall we put it that way, maybe not school, but ready for the learning. And she's thriving now. However, there's also an and to it, the fact that, one, we've got 7 systems in our brain and one of it is loss. So a lot of children, even though they may be having, and we're going through it the same because our brain structure the same, even though we may be having that social interaction and quite a lot of the stuff with our parents and doing things, the system in our brain of loss will still be affecting some children. Loss of the friends, loss of routine, loss of class, even, unfortunately, it might have been an actual loss of a family member through COVID-19. So children that are vulnerable and at home in this period that's not having that social emotional, it will be even worse for them. So yeah, I think even though some children are having a great experience at home with parents or caregivers, they will still be going through an element of loss, and that will come out. And the transition back into school and back into same within grassroots football, so back into playing football, needs to be handled very carefully. And there's things that we can do in these transition periods, but yeah, to try and create as much element of structure and safety for when they're transitioning back is going to be key.
I mean, one of the things that I may foresee, you know, if I was to throw it out there, that when we do return to some normality, whatever that may look like, there may be times we will see a child's behaviour as attention seeking. So
yeah,
can we reframe that as coaches to then help the child?
Yeah, so I think I put a slide up, didn't I, on the slide up on the webinar. So, and I think I mentioned it earlier, if we reframe some of our language and we also reframe some of our seeing of the behaviour, we can see it differently. And children sometimes, through situations, have an unhealthy way of trying to get in connection with us. So we'll sometimes term it like attention seeking, but actually some children really just want to get into connection with you, or they want you to really attune to them, or they want you to keep them safe. So, you know, I'm really struggling here. Can you keep me safe with it? And the more that we can look at that, and every child is so different, which I know I keep mentioning, but if you can look at how you respond to that child, that some of their needs or some of the behaviours that gets expressed is from an unmet need. So they'll be expressing some of those behaviours for you to meet their needs. Mm-hmm. And the more that we can meet their needs, the more that we can help change some of their pathways or their unhealthy ways of trying to get in connection. And a lot of children, you know, will tap or will pull shirts for the kid in front, and sometimes that's a case of, can you just talk to me, instead of the child being able to say, actually, do you know, have you had a good day at school today, and want to get into connection. They're trying in different ways. So be curious about what's the behaviour, what are they trying to get you to do, because a lot of it will not be attention. It'll be either look at me and see me and connect with me and protect me and hear me out.
No, I love that. And again, from the webinar, was the bits that I took was the connect with me, which you're saying there, you know, just maybe speak to them. They might just want to speak to you. Understand them, and then most importantly, I would probably say, is to protect them in that environment. It may be that they're trying to tell you something, and you know, we're going to have to really evolve the role of a coach, I think, coming back after this, to observe and understand a child's behaviour or messages.
Yeah, and there's things we can do in our session to try to put in to create that sense of certainty and structure without going structured session. So if you create the element of certainty and structure, which creates psychological safety, it allows for more creativity. But yeah, there's certain things that we could do as coaches, and I think I mentioned it, is, you know, your personal greetings, your structure boards. Within this time between now and going back, if I was starting training next Tuesday, I would contact all my players on the Friday and go, can't wait to see you on Tuesday, this is what we're going to do, and a structure of what it is. Some children need structure. So that's the kids that will come to you in the start of the session and go, what we're doing tonight, we're playing at the weekend. Yeah. So enable for them to actually, and they can't concentrate on what's coming or learning because they're worried around what's coming next. So probably they're not in all three parts of their brain. They're in that bottom part of their brain that's really kind of like driving behaviours. Mm-hmm. So we need to think about how we create some psychological safety for them and keep in connection with them and put them into a state that they are ready to learn when they're back into our session, so we can be in present with them, which will help mental health and also help put some stuff below the surface.
Again, that's massive for me, Sally, because I think every coach will have experienced it, that as soon as they get to training, what are we doing today? What are we doing? Are we playing a game? Can we have a game? And we just see it as, stop being busy. You know we're going to have a game. We're going to do this. But again, it's that worry and that not knowing of the structure and understanding that behaviour is that maybe that's their way of computing it and dealing with how they're going to perform in that session. And that'll be a massive message that I take away personally from that's, well,
that's their stress response system and their way of being able to try to regulate themselves by knowing what's coming next. So when we go to some children, and I saw it in a game just before I went obviously into lockdown, and the child asked, they were in a tournament, and the child asked, what will they play next? And the coach said, just concentrate on this game. So he went to the next child outside of him, what we play next? Now, we can't concentrate on the game because he needs certainty and he's worrying about what's coming next. So just by having a little timetable, some children need it, some children don't. But yeah, that we tend to go, oh, they're always asking questions, but it's their way of trying to keep them or regulate themselves because they want to know what's coming next, uncertainty. And we've got to sometimes think that some children will be living in a place of uncertainty.
Now, we touched on it earlier offline. There was a recent clip on your webinar of a player, I think he saved the ball with his face. And the way that you understood and helped the player was really, really thought-provoking and refreshing. How vital is it then for coaches to have a relationship with that child? And I'm not talking a deep, meaningful relationship. I'm on about just understanding the player and knowing who they are.
Yeah, and I think, we've touched on it a couple of times already. So the clip of the player were a goalkeeper and it hit the post and then hit him on his nose. And, if you think around when you get it on the nose, it makes your eyes water and it's not nice. And it's embarrassing for the child as well in front of his peers to be then upset and crying. So the way that I always think around it is validating and tune the emotion that the child's feeling. That's not your emotion. You might react to it totally different because of your experiences and how you are, but that child, if they are crying, they've experienced an emotion that's relevant to them. So how then we can attune and validate that emotion and be with them in that enables and the language that we use around it, and some of the safe touch and how we are in our facial expressions and our tone of voice is massive for helping that child to then go probably back into all three parts of their brain, to then have recorded and stored in their nervous system, in their brain, that this has happened, but my coach has come to help me, and they've attuned and validated, and that's what a good thing that's happened. So an experience that's not really nice for that child, when you validate and attune, the language that you use, it hits the limbic part of the system and enables them, like I said, to hopefully return to equilibrium quite quickly, which then, if they're in their state of safety and social engagement, then they are massively in their learning brain. And in your learning brain, you plan, you reflect, problem solve, decision making, and football's a decision making sport, and goalkeeping in particular is around plan, reflecting, and problem solving and decision making. So I needed the child to be back in the session quite quickly because of the role, also meet his needs. But yeah, the language is massive, because for just to say to that child, or calm down or stop crying, it doesn't hit the part of the brain that enables them then to be able to regulate or be able to bring back into their thinking capacity. So that child may go back in goal and just constantly think about his nose. So there's no thinking taking place, there's no problem solving. So you then, ball gets played through to centre forward and you think, why didn't the keeper not come out?
Yeah.
Well, your keeper's not come out because they're still preoccupied on and thinking around, and the brain's taking over their thinking capacity just to keep them safe.
Yeah. I think one of a bit of context for the clip as well was, I think one of the other players within the group laughed, whether, I don't think it was done, intentionally to hurt the player, but he laughed. And I think your response to it was, it's not a nice feeling, it does hurt. And then very shortly in the clip is that the player who laughed is then supporting the player. How important is that?
Yeah, modelling is massive. So modelling behaviours and being consistent in your behaviours is massive. So yeah, and when you say, oh, it's not funny, is it? When you get hit in the nose, it's not. So you have then some children that then give you the nod and the social engagement as though like, no, it's not funny. Like I've had it a couple of times, and So then it kind of then makes people aware that it's not funny because it hurts. And then, yeah, that child went at the end and gave him a little like pat on the back, didn't he? And kind of a smile. And that's, you know, a sense of understanding that he's able to cry, show his emotion because it hurts, and remembering that, you know, that's his experience. We've just got to be there to try to validate and attune. And the more we can validate and attune, not just with children, within any relationship, it's an healthy way to be in relationships with people. So yeah, validating and tuning and matching the sensation and letting them own it and is massive.
I mean, it moves me on to my sort of next point.
Yeah.
Is body language and facial expressions, especially when coaching in the early years. What is your face saying to the players?
Yeah, that's it. I love that saying. Say it all the time, don't I? So I think it's massive in all phases. I do think is that, but definitely foundation first, because of that first pivotal sporting experience that you want them to get, you know, just fall in love with the game. But your face is this. So we want our children, and we want to be, as adults, anybody, in our social engagement system. So feeling safe, up for relationships, giving eye contact, problem solving, decision making, planning and reflecting. When children or adults, or whether humans, are not, and they're in other parts of the system, so they're in either life threat or danger, you will get sometimes quite glazed look, you will get absent-mindedness, or you'll get fear and anger and facial expressions. But a lot of them will go blank because your safety element is connected into your eyes, your mouth, your nose. So when you're up for social engagement, it enables the kids to be, and done out of your conscious awareness is neuroception. So the kids will be feeding all the time out of your conscious awareness and their conscious awareness of threats that are picking up. So if your face isn't in social engagement, or it's detecting, or the kids are detecting threat, it will set them off into not in their social engagement system, which is vital for learning and behaviour. So yeah, I would definitely say have a little look at your face and examine, like you said, what's your face saying to your players, because it's massive on threat detection, and every child will be different and how they perceive that. But yeah, it's all linked into your social engagement system, and you'll get it as well with players when you ask them a question, or at half time you have some that nod and give you eye contact, so they're in their social engagement system. You've got some that's very glazed, that don't give you eye contact. Well, it's a key indicator that they're probably not in their social engagement system. So planning and reflecting and thinking about what they've just done first half, it's just not happening.
Within the Psych Corner, we've got the 5 C's, obviously: confidence, control, concentration, communication and commitment.
Yeah.
Would you say there was one C that is more important than the others, or are they equally as important?
I think they're equally as important. I think the one for me is around understanding the stress response system. So the 5 C's for me, in a sense, and I think I use this metaphor quite a bit, is the grass level of Wembley. So the 5 C's for me is grass level Wembley. Understanding about stress response system and neuroscience of the brain is the stuff, that the soil below the surface. And what enables Wembley to look beautiful all the year round and grow back with NFL, and that's been, is really good soil and care and nurture from the groundsman. So the thing for me is the 5 C's is the soil, is the grass thing, but understanding around child development and neuroscience is what's below the surface. Because for a child to be more confident, there's probably a brain interruption happened between certain stages in child development. And for a child to be confident to try things, they've got to be in their social engagement system, which means they've got to have a good stress response system, or be in their social engagement system at that particular point to be able to then be confident enough to try something, to have that commitment element, or they're just going to be surviving if they're not in their social engagement system. So I don't think one's more important than the other. I think that, and for them to be really understood and to be used with real purpose and impact, then you need to have some of the knowledge of the stuff that sits below that.
No worries. I mean, so what advice would you give to coaches then working in the foundation phase and the importance around the psych corner, understanding and incorporating it into their coaching syllabus and practices?
I would just be consistent with your behaviours and don't hold a grudge. So if a child does something, then the next day, don't hold the grudge with it. Be consistent in how you are, so you know that if they've done something. And my mum used to use this saying all the time with me, and I never realised the impact. She used to say to me, I love you, Sally, but this moment in time I don't like you.
Interesting.
And she used to be consistent with that. I love you, but I don't, at this moment in time I don't like you. And she never held a grudge. It were like forgotten with them. We'd speak about it later, or she'd highlight the behaviour, but she would always start with that. And I think that's in the foundation phase, understanding about them as children first and foremost before you start going into how you're developing your practices, is be consistent, set the boundaries, and create the environment that enables them to be in as much as they can their social engagement system before they start, and understand that every child's totally different. So what you experience or what they experience or what they fear or their behaviours will be totally different. So yeah, and the modelling. So I think a lot of it comes back to us, role modelling, being consistent, creating them boundaries, noticing behaviours, which I think then influences the psych and influences them as children. And so yeah, I'd look at it that way regarding what things we might have to put in us, because we've got a lot of influence in this.
Massive influence. Just before we finish the sort of chat with our, I'm going to say infamous, long-winded, quick-fire question round. How can any listeners follow your work and the content that you share, Sally?
Yeah, so there is bits of, like you said earlier, about like staff did one. I've done one for Cumberland FA. I do things on Twitter, but I literally repost a lot of things on Twitter. So what I see in the psych and social, but it's very much around child development and that. So yeah, Twitter, and anybody's welcome to drop me an email, which is sally.needham@thefa.com, and I'll get back to you. But yeah, I think out and about, there's things out there that is being delivered. But yeah, just get in touch if you want anything else.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Sally. Quick fire question round. Don't worry if you elaborate, because I don't think I've had a quick fire one to date.
Right.
So what do you prefer, developing coaches or developing players?
I prefer developing players, but I think the importance is developing coaches, because I think if you develop coaches and coach development, you get better players anyway and better children. So yeah, I think the importance starts with coach development, but I do love working with the players.
Yeah, I thought for a second you were going to sit on the fence and say, I like developing people, to cover both bases, but no, thank you.
No.
Best friend in football?
Oh God, I've got a few. I would say my closest friends, but I've got some quite long friends in football that I've, like Tessa, I've known from Payne, from being at Beckham Academy, and Tracy Kevin's there, and Ted, and I think I've got friends as I've gone through, but at present, really, in work, best friends in football will probably be Becca Garlick, who's CCD at Manchester. Yeah. She's doing some great work in the adolescent brain and mental health and stuff like that. Julie Chipchase is a great friend in and out of work, and really being an influence. And then a guy on my A licence that I've kept friends with, that I utilise quite a bit to unpick stuff and challenge stuff, Mark Burton. So yeah, probably them three are probably my closest friends in football at the minute.
Fantastic. Biggest wow moment so far?
I haven't got one. I've got loads. Don't know. You know what thing first came to my head when you said that, which I'm not sure it's a wow moment, but I can remember standing on the balcony at SGP watching Samantha Griff deliver, and we did the same A licence together. And I made a comment to the boys, very much, there were 7 females on there, but I made a comment to the boys around, she's a good female coach, and that was my terminology. And a couple of the boys just straight without hesitation and all in sync just went, no, Sally, she's a great coach. Wow. And I just had a moment there, and I just thought, yeah, that was. So when you said wow moment, kind of, that's the first thing that jumped to my head.
No, that is a wow moment. That's massive. One that people have struggled with. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Can I go colours?
If only if you had a little context behind it.
Okay.
Green. Soil.
With what? Sorry.
We'll add some soil to it, not context.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'd go yellow because I do think I'm quite sociable and bubbly. I'd go green because I think I'm quite self-regulated and calm. And I'd go red because I definitely have got a little bit of a Leo side and loyal. So yeah, so 3 colours I think.
Fantastic. That's it. Different spin on it. I like that. Is there anybody you would recommend or like to hear us speak to on the podcast?
Oof, God, I've got loads. At the minute, I'm really picking the brains of Dr. Suzanne Brown. So she's works for Arsenal, but does very much clinical psychology. So she's a great one that I'm looking at. Rusty, Magic Academy. Okay. He's got a different slant and uses Amy Price's work and looks at gamification, but real good character. Pete Sturge is always just an absolute legend, and so fascinated to hear. I love listening to Ben Bartlett. I think Ben's a great person to look at and different. And yeah, I mean, well, Sarah Blakemore would be an absolute steal, which she's adolescent brain, but she's probably one that we can't contact. But yeah, there's quite a few people, but yeah, I think they're the ones that probably would pop to mind. Depending on what area you wanted to look at, I've very much gone psych and social there, but then the other elements of like player development and technical stuff, then I'd probably actually go Mark Burton actually.
Not a problem. We'll drop some messages out over we'll see if we can get them on. But no, Sally, look, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. You've thrown stuff my way that made me forget I was actually hosting a podcast. So I had to remember to ask the question. So thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak to us today. And from everyone here at PCT Coaching, we want to wish you well moving forward, and hopefully your diary isn't too busy moving forward.
Thank you, and thank you for getting in contact and asking me to be on and being curious around the subject. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure, Sally. Thank you ever so much.
DuckTig brand is on hand for all of your coaching needs, whether it be to plan sessions or take notes whilst observing games. DuckTig are able to cover all of your needs. Use the discount code Irvine20 at checkout to receive a discount. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy the content that we're trying to bring to you. Don't forget, new episodes will be released every Monday. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Spotify, and if you want to see the video, you can see it on our YouTube channel, PCT Football Coaching.